Hi all, my name is Catherine, Assistant Professor from the Department of AAML, SNS College of Technology, Coimbatore. Today in our lecture series, we shall see the continuation of this public key crypto systems. As I told you earlier in the previous video, public key crypto system mainly uses two keys, a public key and a private key. Each user will be generating two keys, public key as well as private key, and they will be deciding upon which key to encrypt and which key to the corresponding they have to decide which key to encrypt alone. The corresponding keys will be used for decryption part. In earlier video, I told you Bob is trying to send a message to Alice by making use of Alice public key. So in this picture, as you can see, Bob wants to send a message to Alice, but here what he is doing is he is encrypting with the private with his own private key. So the encryption part alone has to be decided. The decryption will automatically happen with the corresponding keys. Either it is a public key or private key. So here, since he is encrypting with his private key, obviously the message has to be decrypted with his own public key. So in earlier picture, I showed you, he encrypted using the Alice public key. So if he is encrypting with the public key, the corresponding private key should be used for decryption. So the corresponding private key is nothing but Alice private key. So here what happens, the Bob wants to send a message to Alice. So he takes his own key, he locks the message, or you can call it as he encrypts the message. So what is the encryption ciphertext you get? With the help of the encryption of Bob's private key and the plain text is. So when it receives the Alice side, Alice now receives a message which is a ciphertext. So now she sees that it is being encrypted with Bob's private key. So as I told you earlier, both Alice and Bob will be having a public key ring with their own friends' public keys, which will be collected from the directory. So within this directory, she'll go search for Bob's public key. So she'll take Bob's public key, she'll decrypt the message, and the output will be the plain text. So this is how this encryption and decryption happens using the public key crypto systems. So there are two things which can be achieved using this public key crypto system, that is authentication and confidentiality. So if you want the message to be authenticated, if you want the other person to know that only I encrypted this message. So in that case, you have to encrypt using the private key. So the private key will be available only to the person who is encrypting that message. So if he encrypts using his private key, so the other opponent will know, okay, this message is an authenticated message. So for example, here the message source is X and the encryption algorithm, some kind of encryption algorithm we are using, and the key pair source. So everybody will, source A and source B, both of them will have a key pair, private key as well as the public key. So here, what he does is, with the help of the private key, if he encrypts, the message is said to be authenticated. So who will be able to decrypt? Anybody who has access to this public key will be able to decrypt the message. But the source is in order to make the recipient understand that only I encrypted this message, you have to use the private key. So the cryptanalyst, what he will do is, since the public key is available to everyone, he'll try to crack the private key. This is achieved using, the authentication is achieved using making use of the private key. So confidentiality. Now you are not worried about authentication, but you want the message to be very safe and secure. In that case, you have to encrypt with the public key of the recipient, so that who will be able to decrypt? Only the recipient will be able to decrypt the message. So for example, here see the message source X is being encrypted using some encryption algorithm. And if you want the message to be confident, or you don't want anybody else to see the message, obviously what you have to do, you have to take the recipient's public key and you have to encrypt the message. So the ciphertext Y is achieved by making use of E. The E is the encryption algorithm, and the public key of the recipient, and the plain text. So in the decryption part, what he will do is, only the cryptanalyst, what he'll do now, he'll try to take this private key. because only with that private key he will be able to decrypt this algorithm. That is what he'll try to find out. So, but who will be having this access is only the recipient or the destination B will be having his own private key. So with the help of that, he'll decrypt. So now this message, nobody can will be able to decrypt this message without being having access to this private key. So if you want both, in some situations, you'll need both authentication and confidentiality. Here, the message source is X, then the encryption algorithm. First, what you're doing is you're encrypting with the private key of the sender. Sender's private key, it is being encrypted. That ciphertext is being sent again to an encryption algorithm. Here, what happens? It is being encrypted with the receiver's public key. So Z is the final output or the final ciphertext. So what happens here? First, here the decryption algorithm, the corresponding key is what? First, it is being encrypted with the public key of the receiver. So the corresponding key is the private key of the receiver. So when you decrypt, you get Y. Again, it goes to a decryption algorithm, which is being encrypted using the private key of the sender. So the corresponding key is what? The public key of the sender. So that key is being used here and you get the original message. So when you need to achieve both authentication and confidentiality, first you encrypt with your own key, then you encrypt with the receiver's public key. So same way the opposite will happen. The corresponding keys will be used for decryption purpose and the message will be decrypted. So this is all about this public key crypto systems, or you can call it as asymmetric algorithm. So you can achieve two things here in this public key crypto systems: authentication and confidentiality. If you want only authentication, you can choose that key, the private key alone, and you can encrypt and send. If you want only confidentiality, you can encrypt using the public key and send. So if you want both, in that case, you have to use both the keys and you have to make use of two algorithms and you have to encrypt. I hope you all understood. Thank you.